I remember the good old days watching the MCU, going to the movie theaters to see the latest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and being so excited to see what's going to happen next. And then Endgame came along and it felt like a pretty damn satisfying conclusion to this saga of movies. And I remember being in the theater being like, if they ended the MCU here, I wouldn't be too mad. But of course, Endgame became the biggest, highest grossing film of all time. And of course, it's owned by Disney, so they're gonna make more films. And sadly, I've just bared witness to the tragic downfall of the MCU. And to be honest with you, it's not been fun to watch this downfall. It's a little sad and embarrassing just seeing how far the MCU has gone down in terms of quality. I mean, if you've seen the score for Rotten Tomatoes, yikes. The lowest rated MCU TV show of all time. Oh my gosh. I've only seen the first episode of this show and I couldn't even escape the amount of spoilers that were just thrown at me when the final episode dropped. And honestly, I didn't really have much of a reaction to them, which surprised me more than the spoilers. The fact that I just didn't really care goes to show you how much I've just fallen out of love with the MCU. I mean, if you know, you know. And it's a little predictable. I kinda had an idea of where the story was going to go, and of course it doesn't help the MCU's case that this show had some of the lowest ratings. But why is that? Why is the MCU just starting to fumble after the dramatic endgame that we got a couple of years back? Well, I think it's three reasons. Number one, there's just too much all at once. Before 2017, the MCU would only release 2 movies a year, and because of that, there was always a lot of hype surrounding those movies. 2017 and 2018 and 2019 came along and they started to add an extra film per year, so it was 3 movies a year. Even though 3 isn't too much, even when Thor Ragnarok came out, even back then I felt like, yikes, that's too much all at once. I felt like watching Ragnarok, that was the time when I started to really feel the fatigue of the MCU. Just the overwhelming amount of humor and just okay storylines were just enough for me to just lose interest in it. But I still turned a blind eye to that movie and I just kept moving on and I just continued watching the movies and I still liked some of them. Black Panther, Infinity War, Endgame, they were all pretty awesome. And then 2021 came along and we got phase 4 and that's when I was like, oh yeah, this is when the MCU is really starting to turn a bit rotten. We had WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, The Eternals and No Way Home, all in the same year. That is 7 MCU stuff we got in the same year. 7! And I know since then they've reduced that to 6 because technically Spider-Man is Sony, but still that's a lot of stuff to catch up on. Even me, I was feeling really exhausted just catching up with WandaVision, then Falcon, then Loki, then watching all the movies. It was just too much. I feel like I was just wasting too much of my time watching these stuff. It's a big time investment, mate. And I really do feel sorry for those who went into Doctor Strange 2 without having watched WandaVision and just having no idea that Wanda is a quote-unquote bad person. It's funny because I feel like the MCU is starting to go down the same route as how comics went down, where there were just too many comics with too many different characters and too many different storylines and people just didn't know where to begin from or where to even pick their first comic book up because you didn't know where one thing started and one thing ended. That's sort of the way the MCU is now, to be honest with you. Another reason why I feel like the MCU is going downhill is definitely the politics within their films and TV shows. The W word, woke. Yeah, a lot of people have been calling this the wokest phase of the MCU so far, with the new term, the MCU. But the funny thing with the politics is that I don't think that's the worst part of the MCU. I feel like it's probably the most egregious in Thor Love and Thunder, where Thor is just this bumbling buffoon throughout the entire movie, where Jane is this strong, powerful girl boss. Yeah, that movie triggered a certain demographic of people. But as I said before, I don't think the politics really ruins those movies. I feel like it's the overwhelming amount of content to consume. Most of the shows and movies just aren't really well written. Sure, I did have fun watching Ant-Man Quantumania, but apart from Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Guardians 3, I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I don't think all the movies and shows are well written. I feel like they are oddly paced out. Sometimes the pacing is really slow and sluggish, and other times it's so fast that they needed to just take their time. I feel like that with Loki and WandaVision, which leads into my third reason as to why the MCU is going downhill. I think the bad writing and just uninteresting storylines and plot points that the MCU are doing, I just don't think it's getting people excited or hyped anymore, you know? Yes, when you have political correctness in your movies, you're going to trigger some people, and people don't want to be lectured when they watch a movie, you know? They want to go into the theater and just forget about the really sad real world that is reality. But when they escape that really depressing world and go into the movie theaters to be reminded of how depressing the world is, it's just going to piss people off, dude. And to put the cherry on top of the cake, which is some of the bad writing in some of these shows and movies, you're just going to turn so many of your fan base off, and I for one am part of that. Yeah, I will admit that Ragnarok back in 2017 was the beginning of my fatigue of the MCU, but I still kept pushing forward. I still wanted to see what was coming next, but it was in fact Loki that made me start to really fall out of love with the MCU. But what do you suppose the MCU can do to improve and to get back on track? Number one, just stop making TV shows. I think the Disney Plus shows is what's killing the MCU right now. Go back to just releasing 3 movies in a year. I think you're starting to alienate your audience. You're going to have those that love watching streaming stuff but don't really go to the theaters that much, and you have those that love the cinema but don't really watch a whole lot of TV shows. I think the MCU should just do one or the other and stick to that. Otherwise you're going to have a very divided fandom, and you're just going to have people feeling really alienated from your content. I also feel like the CGI needs to probably improve in some movies, because personally I don't really have an issue, but a lot of people do have issues with the CGI with a lot of the TV shows and movies. They think it's bad and janky at times, and I think they just need to focus more on the story and less about trying to teach people a lesson, you know, when it comes to some of the politics that they do. But it's the Walt Disney Company. Will they do that? Well, it's up to them. But so far, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I've been a little bit depressed with the MCU lately. I remember the days where I used to talk about an MCU movie and talk over 10 minutes about how much I loved a certain movie or whatnot, and now I just can't even talk 3 minutes without feeling a little bit bored when it comes to a certain movie or TV show. Yeah, I'm not gonna really watch the Secret Invasion show. I just don't think it's worth the hype after seeing all the spoilers, and I'm gonna be brutally honest, I think I'm done with the MCU TV shows. I will watch the movies, but the TV shows, I think I'm done. I think I'm done watching them. They're not for me, mate. I just don't really like Disney's style when it comes to the TV shows. I think Obi-Wan Kenobi also fell into that category. I don't know, I just feel like the stories are just too long to be a movie, but they're too short to be a TV show. It's really weird. But I suppose that's my rant out of the way. What did you guys think of the MCU? Do you think the MCU is going downhill, and when did you stop liking the MCU? Do you still like the MCU? Tell me. Do you think they could get back on track or not? Like this video, subscribe for more movie reviews. But thank you for watching, and as always, a boy did the review, signing out.